Now that Godzilla vs. Kong has finally come out, I thought it would be a good time to update one of my most popular Godzilla list videos, the top 5 deadliest foes of Godzilla. When looking through comments and suggestions on kaiju that should have been on the list from you guys in that original video, I figured we could expand that list to a top 10. Now this time I made the list a bit more specific, so no general listings like King Ghidorah. Instead, I'll list the version like the Showa King Ghidorah or its Heisei iteration, allowing for some kaiju to appear on the list more than once. And now keep in mind, these monsters are listed in power relative to their era's Godzilla. That way, each era's monsters have a decent chance of making the list. I'm also only including the live action films, so no anime, cartoons, or comic books here. With those simple rules out of the way, let's dive in and check out Godzilla's top 10 deadliest foes. Beginning at number 10 is the Showa era's MechaGodzilla.
You're mistaken if you think your powers are a match for MechaGodzilla.
The Showa Mecha-G was a ruthless enemy to Godzilla. Where the other MechaGodzillas were created to defend Japan, this one was made to conquer it. In its 2 appearances, the SIMEONS robot monster was relentless in battle, quickly taking out King Keizer and Anguirus in one-on-one fights. But its main objective was to
beat Godzilla to death,
giving him some of his toughest earned victories of the era. Other than Gigan, no other enemy could make Godzilla bleed as easily. Its ranged weaponry was unmatched for the era and possibly the entire franchise. Godzilla would need to become an electromagnet of sorts to defeat the first version, and he would get help to defeat it once more in Terror of MechaGodzilla, when Katsura's suicide would leave the robot dead in the water. Number 9. The Millennium era's MechaGodzilla, or Kiryu. Kiryu, armed with the Absolute Zero weapon, was a formidable and deadly opponent. It didn't have the variety of ranged attacks that its Showa iteration had, but Absolute Zero made all those rays and missiles look like toys. Unfortunately, it would only land one shot on Godzilla, and it was underwater, perhaps weakening its strength. Yet still, it tore a chunk out of his chest, one that didn't heal up completely either, leaving a huge scar. Even when the Absolute Zero weapon couldn't be repaired for Tokyo SOS, Kiryu would get a triple hyper maser instead. A good weapon considering maser fire was actually effective against this version of Godzilla. Kiryu was fast, with improved agility and melee skills over its predecessors, with weapons capable of tearing through Godzilla's flesh like the anti-beast drilling device and the maser blade. Number 8. King Ghidorah of the Showa era. If there was one monster that could not be fought on a one-on-one basis, it's the Showa Hedorah. Now to be fair, the Ghidorahs do have 3 heads, but in all seriousness, this version of the Big 3G was too powerful for Godzilla to fight alone. He always needed help, and not just anyone's help. We're talking Rodan, a flying kaiju with the strength possibly equal to Godzilla's, and Mothra, another one of the powerful 5 Toho kaiju. Later Ghidorahs like the Heisei version and GMKs could be fought by Godzilla one-on-one, but not the Showa Hedorah. Pound for pound, it may be one of the most underrated members of the Ghidorah species. Number 7. The Heisei era's Space Godzilla. Space G is a massive beast, outweighing its Godzilla by 20,000 metric tons. He's probably one of the most evil and vindictive kaiju for Godzilla to ever face off with. He kidnapped little Godzilla simply to torment the Big G, and was extremely powerful, able to toss robots like Mogera, who weighed 160,000 metric tons, twice his own weight, with ease using only his tail. It had a shield that could disperse Godzilla's atomic breath attack. He can levitate himself and other monsters, and he surrounds himself in large crystals, capable of giving him extra power while also being used as a weapon when needed. Oozing in at number 6 is the Showa era's Hedorah. The smog monster, in my opinion, is the most underrated of any enemy to face off with Godzilla. This thing was pretty much unstoppable. It's nearly impossible to kill this thing off completely. It's not just one creature, but a grouping of many growing in size and combining when needed. It felt no pain and was vindictive, much like Space Godzilla. Its acid secretions were able to melt the flesh of Godzilla, stripping away his hand down to the bone. If not for the help of the humans with those electricity arrays used to dry out the smog monster, I don't think Godzilla would have been able to stop it. In my opinion, it would have just kept growing until it was eventually large enough to kill him. Ignore that Final War smog monster. This one is the real deal, and would be a deadly threat to any era's Godzilla. Now finally in the top 5, we have no stranger to the list with the Heisei era's MechaGodzilla and its upgraded form, Super Mecha G. Now I know some of you out there might be saying that there's too many Mecha Gs on this list, but don't forget, this guy is built specifically to defeat Godzilla, and it stands to reason that a metal monster would do well against a fleshy one. Now MechaGodzilla 2, and not the Showa MG2, was a powerhouse and almost killed Godzilla twice. Again lacking in the variety of weapons that the Showa Mecha G had, this man-made follow-up would go with quality over quantity. It had the Mega Buster Breath attack, one close in strength to Godzilla's, along with its eye-mounted laser cannons, but it would rely on a technique that was meant to stun and immobilize and then kill Godzilla. It would use paralyzer and tranquilizer missiles to keep Godzilla down, and then it would use its shock anchors or an upgraded G-Crusher to pierce Godzilla and electrocute it from within. It could even negate or return Godzilla's atomic breath, diverting it with a synthetic diamond coating, or storing it and returning it with even more power in the form of plasma grenades. This version of MechaGodzilla took out Fire Rodan and nearly the Big G himself. It would take a new power of sorts, with Godzilla reversing the charge with an atomic pulse for the first win, and a Mothra-like Rodan power-up to melt the coating and destroy Super Mecha G for the second one. Number 4. Legendary's Ghidorah. This is one huge titan. It dwarfed the already large Legendary G at 521 feet tall versus his 393 foot tall height, and outweighed him by some 42,000 metric tons. It's got gravity beams on par with other Ghidorahs, but this version can absorb energy and reuse it offensively with its wing lightning attack, or as a power-up, as seen when absorbing the energy from Godzilla in their final battle. Unlike other Ghidorahs, this one is the Stormbringer, capable of changing the weather around it to apocalypse levels. Add to this its amazing regeneration ability, able to regrow an entire head, and the fact that this Ghidorah has an alpha call that can wake other titans, causing havoc, and it's easy to see why it's one of the deadliest of the species. It almost killed Godzilla at the end of King of the Monsters. Godzilla just received that Mothra power-up, but before it could take effect, Ghidorah was already siphoning off the energy, lighting itself up, possibly becoming Burning Ghidorah, a terrifying thought. It was only by the distraction of Emma with the Orca that pulled Ghidorah away long enough for Mothra's power to take hold, giving us Burning Godzilla. Number 3. Legendary's MechaGodzilla. Now yeah, at least for now, I do have this guy above Legendary's Ghidorah, and I know some of you may not like that standing, but Godzilla didn't even scratch Mecha G, a lot more than you can say with Ghidorah. Mecha G was faster than Godzilla, countering his moves with ease and tossing him around like a child. Just show me another fight where Godzilla looked as scared as he did here. On top of that, I don't buy the argument that Godzilla was tired from fighting Kong either. I mean, yeah, I'm sure he had a bit taken out of him with that fight, but he was clearly outclassed here by a robot specifically designed to kill him. I also don't think the fight would have looked much different if Godzilla and Kong were both fresh and ready to go. Speaking of Kong, Mecha G tore him up too, tanking his axe until Godzilla was able to blast it full of power. Even then, if Josh didn't spill on the control panel, stunning Mecha G briefly, it may have been able to dodge or fend off Kong's attacks. That laser weapon may be the best beam weapon to ever appear in a Godzilla film. It cut that Skullcrawler in half like a hot knife through butter, burned the flesh of Godzilla, and I think the director wanted us to believe that it would have decapitated the Big G with the kiss of death, if Kong hadn't jumped back in. In fact, with that laser combined with the speed of MechaGodzilla, it's hard enough for me to not put it at the number 1 spot, and I wouldn't blame you if it causes you to list him as such. However, it's hard for me to have such a newcomer knock off the top 2 kaiju that have been at the top of most people's lists for a long time. Number 2. It's 2 monsters but 1 kaiju with Keizer Ghidorah and its early vessel or stage, Monster X. I know lots of you guys out there have issues with Final Wars, with the main one being how many fights are in the film and how short those fights were. However, I do think that Toho meant for these monsters to be as strong, if not stronger, than any of their other prior incarnations. To put this film into context, this was a 50th anniversary film, and a final entry into that era. In celebration of Godzilla's 50th birthday, I think this was meant to be the most powerful Godzilla that we'd ever seen. And according to a theater pamphlet from Toho, this would be the most powerful version of Ghidorah with the Keizer. Upon its arrival, Monster X was the only kaiju to really be able to hurt this Godzilla, with its beam attack dropping him in pain. However, it would be that next stage, Keizer Ghidorah, that really holds down this number 2 spot. Now powered up, Ghidorah had gravity beams that could outdo this Godzilla's breath attack and a beam lock, a feat seen before, but final Godzilla's atomic blast is insane. Those beams also earn their namesake, being able to lift and control objects as large as Godzilla himself. For a finishing move, it could drain the energy from Godzilla and may have killed him doing so if not for Ozaki's Keizer power-up, one of the most powerful upgrades Godzilla has ever received. So that leaves us with one obvious kaiju to reign at number 1, and that is the final monster of the Heisei era, Destoroyah. It'll be hard to bump this guy from the top spot. It's made of the actual oxygen destroyer that killed the first Showa era's Godzilla. Godzilla in the Heisei era had become more and more powerful with each film, growing in size and energy like never before. This would culminate in Burning Godzilla, a top-tier kaiju, and Destoroyah would stand toe-to-toe with it. This monster was like Hedorah, where it could form up from smaller monsters into larger ones. I'd also bet that, like Hedorah, you can't really kill all of it. There's likely to be tiny ones still out there that will grow and become dangerous. Burning Godzilla had a near instant healing factor and an infinitely increasing atomic breath attack, yet still Destoroyah was able to fight through this, where others like Super Mecha G and Space Godzilla would have fallen. Its main attack was the Oxygen Destroyer Ray, capable of finishing off Godzilla Jr. and hurting his dad. It could siphon off energy from enemies in most forms, and its laser horn tore through the chest of Godzilla. It's even possible that the Heisei era's Burning Godzilla put out the same temps as the legendary one did. You didn't see it with the earlier version, and it's more reserved special effects, meaning Destoroyah held up better up close to a Burning G than Ghidorah did. Yet even though Destoroyah was able to survive a few of those insane spiral beam attacks, I have to believe that a few more would have ended him. Either way, Destoroyah is a special monster, only used once by Toho so far, meant for a special occasion like ending the Heisei era. So now that top 3 with legendary MechaGodzilla, Keizer Ghidorah, and Destoroyah were really tough for me to settle on. All of them had a chance to kill their respective Godzillas at or near their height of power. Who do you guys think is the greater threat to legendary Godzilla, Ghidorah or MechaGodzilla? I also wonder if there's anyone out there that puts legendaries Ghidorah and MechaGodzilla above Keizer Ghidorah and Destoroyah in effectiveness against their respective Godzillas. These lists for me are always fun to make, but kinda tough to put together. They do change with time, mostly because of your guys' input. So let's discuss this and compare lists down below. And as always guys, take care, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.